Hello everyone, this is Rabab Alma, licensed marriage and family therapist, and today I have a special guest. She is also a licensed marriage and family therapist and motivational speaker, and I'm waiting for her to join me. I would like to point out that these lives and interviews are meant for general info only. They are not meant for medical or therapeutic advice. So again, I'm waiting for my friend and colleague, um, Saadia Yunus. I'm waiting for Saadia to join. I'm excited to have Saadia. She is a colleague and a dear friend, and I did interview her a couple of back in August, and it was a success. And I wanted to have another discussion with Saadia about different issues, and today it's a unique issue about communication dance with your adult child. So now I will bring her. She's joining us. Please join us.
Are you?
Hey Saadia.
Hello. Just fixing my camera. How are you?
How are you? How are you?
Good to see you
Good to see
today.
you today.
Yeah, good to see you too. Yes, so I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with individuals, couples, and families. I'm also a motivational speaker. So I love to give talks and speeches and workshops all throughout the country. Yes, I'm on Long Island, New York. I also see people online all throughout the state of New York. I work with all different types of people, different ages, individuals, couples, and families, children, very young children, teens, adolescents, adults, couples, all kinds of families. It's really been something that has been coming up a lot in my sessions with clients, in my conversations with people. It's really about like how, it was coming up a lot. It was a concern that people had, and I see it a lot in session. How do parents communicate with their adult children versus their younger children? It really was coming up a lot. So I said, hey, this would be a great topic to discuss. Yes, and this is something that parents don't really realize. They don't kind of reflect on. I myself, as a parent of four children, you tend to forget that communication has to kind of evolve with the ages of the children, right? When they're young children, we speak to them a different way than when they become, preteens and then teens. Even with adolescents, it's a different way of communicating that we did when they were younger. And then now they're becoming young adults and then adults, the communication has to transform. And so when we have adult children, now these are adults, just like any adult that we see on the street or anybody that we're conversing with in our families or at work, etc. We're speaking adult to adult. And when we're parents of an adult child, we tend to forget that, and we tend to kind of go into the old ways of communicating. I'm your mother, you have to listen to me, and I raised you, and we get into these ways of speaking to them as if they were younger. So I think we have to remind ourselves to speak to them adult to adult. Yes, definitely very difficult, right? Because as a parent, you're like, I'm still the mother, I'm still the father, and this is my child. And so I think it takes that bird's eye view of kind of looking at the overall relationship. I know that I want to speak to my adult child a certain way to get them to listen, to get them to, follow what I have taught them all of these years. But I have to kind of look at the big picture and how do I want this relationship to be? Do I want them to feel respected? Do I want them to actually feel like I listen to them and I respect their choices as adults, and I love them no matter what? So it really is about kind of taking a step back, and that's a lot of what parenting is: being able to take that step back and say that I'd like to respond this way because I'm frustrated, or my child isn't listening to me, but is this the best way to respond in this situation? There are so many challenges, right? The challenges of trying to, when your adult child makes decisions that you don't agree with, when they kind of go against your wishes, you have a certain plan and a dream for them, and they do the complete opposite. I think those are the challenges when it comes to a parent with the adult child. I think there's a lot of other challenges when it comes to the ways of communicating now. There's texting, there's calling, there's FaceTime, there's seeing each other in person, and I think a lot of that communication gets lost in translation, especially when it comes to texting. So there are plenty of challenges. I think our own individual hopes and dreams and issues that we're dealing with as parents, and then being able to kind of come together to communicate those differences and come to, the same page, to be able to understand each other. Yeah, that's definitely what it's about. It's being able to let go, right? Being able to step back and to be like, okay, I've been with this child from birth until now. And, when they were a kid, I had to make sure that they listened to me, right? Look both ways when you cross the street, and make sure you eat your vegetables and all of these other kinds of things. But it's at that certain point where you're like, okay, now it's time for me to be able to let go. And that's the most difficult thing. But being able to, give my adult child the space to make his or her own decisions. I think the advantages are plenty, in the sense that you can have a beautiful relationship with your adult child, right? The adult to adult interaction can be so much more meaningful. The connection can be strong, and you can really kind of be close, right? And I was reading some research. There was a research that was done on the different types of communication that parents have with their adult children: texting, phone calls, and seeing them in person. And it was saying the more often that they communicate, the happier that they are, both sides, right? The more, and not only that, but the more positive interactions that they will have, the more that they communicate. So there's advantages in that, right? And you're going to communicate more with each other when you're communicating effectively, when you're communicating with respect and love, right? Because your adult child will create distance between you if you're bothering them or trying to control them or pushing them away in whatever ways, not purposefully, but if they feel that way, right? So then they'll create this kind of distance, like, oh, I'm busy, or they won't feel like talking to you. But when you have this effective communication, when you're respecting their, choices, you're giving them that space, and you're still giving that love and connection in return, then you'll be speaking more with one another, and then your interactions will be more positive. So there's plenty of advantages to that. So it's basically about talking with your adult child instead of talking at. You know, because when our children are younger, we tend to talk at them, like, do this, do that, don't go there, you know, listen to me, I'm your parent. And so when it comes to them being adults now it's talking with them. And it's really changing, transforming the way that we're speaking. And so maintaining differences comes from that ability to communicate effectively. So we acknowledge that there are differences. And instead of talking at them like, okay, no, I don't want you to do this, or you shouldn't do this, it's, you know, let's talk about this. Let's figure out, like, where are the differences? You know, why do we see things differently? And let's figure out how to come to a mutual decision or a mutual understanding in some way. So it really is about being able to take a step back, understand that sense of autonomy, right? That they're adults and they need that sense of autonomy. But as parents, there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of experience that we can pass on. So being able to sit with them and effectively communicate. Many common issues that definitely have come into session are the communication gap, right? There, maybe your adult child is off to college, or you know, they're working, and so there isn't this time, right? They're not making time to kind of sit with the parents and give them that quality time and effectively communicate with them. So that's been a common complaint in session, that he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, or she doesn't want to talk to me anymore. And again, that goes back to really seeing, like, how are you communicating with him or her, and what is kind of making them distance themselves, you know, from you. Um, other kinds of common issues are, you know, when it comes to decision making, you know, there's a certain job that he or she wants to take. There's a person that he or she wants to marry. And so with the parents having a different opinion or a different view on things, this can create a lot of tension. So how can we get to a mutual understanding? Okay, so it has to be a willingness on both sides, right? It has to be where we are leaning into each other. And that really requires vulnerability from both sides. It requires vulnerability from the side of the parent, and probably more so from the parent, and from the side of the adult child. Because when we're willing to be open and honest and vulnerable, it will create the connection between us. Okay? Then there also has to be the the setting of the stage. So we got to be able to say, okay, this is an issue, acknowledge it. Really, that's really the first step, is acknowledging it, because so many people will shove it under the rug. So many people will like refuse to talk about it, or say, I don't want to talk about this. So acknowledging the issue, right? Saying that there is an issue at hand, and then being able to sit down and discuss it in a way that you're listening to each other, in the way that you're open and honest. Okay, so it requires that vulnerability, the openness and honesty, having the space, making the space, and acknowledging what the issue is, and then making the space to sit down and to discuss it, and then to use communication tips and tricks and skills that I hope we can discuss to have a good, effective conversation. So it's really about kind of what I said before about, like, acknowledging that there's a disagreement, right? And saying that, okay, we need to really sit down and discuss this. So making sure that there's the proper stage. So is everybody in the right mood? Is it the right time and the right place? Because if somebody's, you know, really angry, or if somebody is tired or hungry, etc., it's going to create, cause kind of barriers in the communication. So making sure that the setting is right, and then being able to use those tips and tricks to communicate effectively with one another. And it really requires, again, going back to the vulnerability and the openness and saying, okay, this is the issue. And the overall goal, keeping the overall goal in mind, is that our relationship is the most important thing. Father and son, mother and son, parents and daughter, whatever it is, our relationship is the goal. That it's the most important thing. It's the glue. The issue is secondary, right? So whatever the issue is, because our relationship is so important and because we love each other and we value each other, we're going to discuss this and figure out what will be the best solution. But keeping in mind that the relationship is the most important thing. So not saying anything or doing anything that will jeopardize the relationship.
So the relationship should be number one priority.
Yes. We think, okay, this is what I want and I feel very strongly about it. And that's okay. We're humans, as parents, as children, we're humans. So we're going to have strong emotions. We're going to feel strongly about things. And it's okay. But what's more important than the individual wants and needs and desires is the relationship. Is our connection as parent and child. There's nothing more powerful than that. And so not allowing whatever the issue is, no matter how horrible, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging, we will not allow that to destroy our relationship as parent and child. But unfortunately, right, like there's so many situations where people will disown their child because of decisions that they make, or they cut off communication. I've had clients, right, in situations in the community where it's like, well, my child made this decision, and so they're no longer my child, or I won't communicate with them anymore, or even an adult child. I haven't spoken to my father in a year or 3 months, and it really is about going back to what's the most important thing, and again, that being the bond between parent and child, and not the issue that's secondary. My future plans, definitely focusing on my private practice, but aside of that is I'm working on a lot of videos for YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and so I'm working on building more and more videos because I realized that even though we would like more and more people to go to therapy to get the help that they need, people don't realize how valuable of a resource it is and how important it is to go to therapy, no matter what the situation is. So I realized that this was a way that I could reach people with the positive messages of, the importance of therapy, how we need to talk more about mental health, how we need to, spread the messages of positivity, self-awareness, positive relationships. And so I've been working on more videos, informative videos, so that people can benefit from the information that relates to the individual couple and family. I've been doing a few podcasts, and that's been exciting. I do have a few coming up, but usually around this time it slows down a bit with the holidays and people traveling and things. I know March and April tend to be the busiest months for speaking engagements, so I have a few booked for March and April, and just focusing on getting more videos out there and focusing on my private practice. People can find me on my website, saadiayunus.com, my Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I also have a Patreon page. They can visit my Patreon page to support me in this work of coming up with more motivational videos. My email is info@saadiayunus.com. So they can find me all over.
And also.
Yes, so are you.
Thank you. So what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts when it comes to like communication tips is that we are not born excellent communicators, right? It's something that we have to learn. It's something we have to take the effort to actually learn how to communicate better. You know, therapy is a great place to learn because you have a professional who's looking in on how you're communicating with your loved one. There's so many books and articles and things out there. One thing I like to just pass on quickly to people is the left, right, left is the way that you can remember it. When you're crossing the street, you have to look left, right, and left. So listen, reflect, and learn. So it's important to listen first. We tend to try to talk first at the person. Listen to them, reflect what they said back to you, back to them, so that they can say whether you heard them right or not. And then to learn what they want, learn about them. It's communicating is about the other person. We try to just, say whatever we want to say, but communication is about understanding what the other person has to say and really listening to them.